awesome day. There's not a cloud in the sky, the sun is out, and I've got my camera full of bags, my bag full of cameras. I've got my mind set on taking some absolutely bangers here at an awesome waterfall. I arrive at location, put my bag down, I start unpacking, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this is gonna be a good one. So I finish setting up, I steady my hand, I go to take my shot, and no, that's not it. I'm not feeling this one. So I'm gonna try again, and again, and again, and again, till... Now, this isn't just some editing style. There's no preset that can make something like this. This is called exposure bracketing. And today we're going to be diving into this super insanely overpowered photography technique. And it doesn't matter whether you're shooting landscapes, car photography, or interiors. This overpowered technique can actually change your photography in less than 2 to 3 shots. That's it. What exactly is exposure bracketing? In simple terms, it's the process of taking 2 to 3 different shots at different exposures. 1 underexposed, 1 overexposed, and 1 perfectly exposed. This allows you to capture details in your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows, which you then can combine in Lightroom or Photoshop, which results in a perfectly exposed image. There's a few ways that you can achieve this look. First one being changing your aperture and your shutter speed, and the second one is using ND filters. But enough of me talking about this. Let's actually put this into action and head to our first location. All right, first up we have this awesome waterfall location. As you can probably tell, the lighting is all over the place here. We've got super bright highlights coming from the sky, but we also have a huge amount of shadows because of the trees covering the waterfall. Now, in order for us to capture the full dynamic range here, we need to use exposure bracketing. As the name implies, exposure bracketing means that you're taking 3 photos, and you need to be able to expose correctly for the highlights, for the midtones, and the shadows. 3 shots. Very, very simple. Because we're taking a landscape shot, we need to set our settings correctly. We want to make sure that we're getting everything in focus, so the first thing we need to do is correctly set our aperture, which I have mine currently set at f6.3, and it won't be changing. From here, we want to correctly set our shutter speed, which I have mine set at 1/60th of a second, and my ISO is as low as it can go at ISO 50. So now we want to take the first shot with the highlights correctly exposed. First shot is done. Now, I'm going to lower my shutter speed 1/6 of a second. This to me looks like it's very correctly exposed for the midtones. Nothing else has changed. Now to expose for the shadows, I'm bringing my shutter speed back to 0.6 of a second. To me, this pretty much feels like it's doing its job. And once we merge all of these together, you get something that looks like this. All we've done is merge these in Lightroom, and we've gotten a pretty fantastic result. But exposure bracketing isn't just for landscape photos. You can also use it for car photography. Car photography is often quite tricky to get right. If you know what you're doing, you can absolutely take amazing shots. But for someone like me, and maybe you, who's still dabbling in car photography, it can be quite tricky to understand and know how everything works. So why not take the guesswork out of it and just expose for your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows. This particular scene that I have right here is quite tricky. Because we're shooting at night, we have singular light sources everywhere, and then everything else is just dark. So how do we counteract this? Well, exposure bracketing is how we counteract this. Now, I'm going to be shooting all of this on my Sony a7 Mark IV with a 17 to 28mm f2.8 Tamron lens. Now, this is a particularly expensive setup, but you don't need a hugely expensive setup. I'm also going to be shooting this on a $100 Sony a300. I picked this up off Facebook Marketplace. This has quickly become one of my most favorite cameras. It is an absolute beast. But first, let's get the car in position
and start taking some cool photos. I think we can work it here, but I need you to turn your headlights on, and I also need you to turn your wheel to the right. Oh, someone put more light out for us. What is this shot looking like here? This ain't too bad. It's a front quarter. Dig that. Okay, so now, oh, well, turn your car all the way off. 2 seconds. All right, you can turn your car on and your lights on. All right, yeah, keep it like that. Cool. Awesome. So now we've switched over to the A300. This is the $100 Facebook Marketplace camera. Yes, I actually picked this up off Facebook Marketplace for $100. And it is absolutely amazing. Okay, that looks like it is in focus. Now back to 1/6 of a second. And just so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay, that looks like it's in focus. It's close enough for me. And so can you turn on your lights now, please? Okay, so let's go 1/10 of a second, 1/15 of a second. Again, you're probably gonna have to fiddle around with the way that this is gonna look, especially shooting at night. But just know that you can get some amazing shots with just a very cheap $100 camera from Facebook Marketplace. So as you can see, with just this example, car photography and exposure bracketing works incredibly well, but it's not the only place that it's applicable. You've already seen that you can do it with landscapes. You've seen that we can do it with car photography, but did you know that real estate photographers, that is how they take such amazing shots. They use exposure bracketing. So let's head inside and take some photos. Shooting interiors can be particularly fickle, especially because they have, a lot of highlights. They've got lots of open windows, they have lots of mid-tones from all the reflecting woods, and they also have a lot of shadows, given if there's furniture or anything in the room that is creating some kind of shadow. You want to be able to capture all of that. And the reason real estate photos look as amazing as they do is because they use exposure bracketing. I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can achieve exposure bracketing. One is the first way, which is just dropping your aperture, dropping your ISO, dropping your shutter speed. And the second one is using ND filters that have kindly been supplied to me by Kent Faith. So you've taken your bracketed photos and we now need to merge them. But how do we do that? Well, there's 2 ways we can do that. One is through Lightroom and the other is through Photoshop. Lightroom has an auto function, which is great for interiors and landscapes, but you'll want to use Photoshop, or at least I use Photoshop for when I'm doing car photography, as
There's some masking that needs to happen. It's just a little bit fiddly, but you can still get a pretty amazing result. Before we get into post-processing though, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, Ken Faith. They have kindly supplied me with a magnetic lens filter set that comes with 2 ND filters as well as a CPL, which is on the camera right now. Now you've already seen how fast that you can swap these filters around, but something that I am super guilty of, I shoot most of my videos with an ND filter. This is just a generic branded ND filter. And I often forget that I have an ND filter on my camera. This becomes an issue when you are shooting interiors or you're on a photo shoot and you have complete control over your lighting situation. Forgetting that you have an ND filter on there immediately limits the amount of light that you get into your camera. Thus, every shot that you take is either super cranked in terms of settings or super underexposed, even if your settings are correct. I am super stoked to say that I don't think I'm going to have that problem anymore because, well, oh no, I'm underexposed. You can't see me. Well, all I have to do now is take off the ND filter. There's no more screwing around. There's no more screwing things in. It's just take off. That's it. Doubled with the fact that usually my filters live on my camera, so it's nice to know that these are scratch resistant and water resistant, so I don't have to worry about anything anymore. If you want to pick up the same filter set and try it out for yourself, well, there's a link down below, and if you use the code adventure20 at checkout, you get 20% off your purchase. Now, full transparency here, I do get a little bit of kickback, but it all goes back into the channel so I can continue doing all these crazy and chaotic adventures. But enough of the sponsored segment, let's get into post-processing. First up is the landscape shots. So we want to grab 3 shots here. 1, 2, 3. And then we want to right click, photo merge, HDR merge. Or if you don't want to do that, you can press Control H. Literally Lightroom does the rest. Now we want to merge it together. It's going to create a stack. Once it's saved, you can see here that it's auto applied settings. So I'm going to manually straighten this image just a little bit. I feel like something like this is just enough for me. We have a lot of control with our highlights here. We can even bring that down even more, bring up the shadows more, and we have a pretty damn good image here. There's no like crazy edits on this or anything. This is just using the exposure, highlights, shadows, and a little bit of tone curve. We can add more vibrance in if we want, and you can go absolutely crazy with this. But as it is, that is a pretty damn good image. Now, if we jump over to the interiors, one with highlights, one with shadows, one for midtones. We want to create HDR merge, just the same as before. Honestly, that's fine the way it is. And you can see we've got a pretty damn good image looking here. Pretty damn good looking image here. I can't even speak. With the merged photo selected, you can see the settings here. You can adjust them to however you want them to be. Add less contrast, add more contrast, play with more of the exposure, play with highlights and shadows, your white points, your blacks, all that stuff to get the image looking the way that you want. Moving on to car photography. Since I have my Photoshop and Lightroom connected, I'm going to click on Lightroom Photos and come over to the 2 photos that I want to merge together. And then we want to import the selected photos. We want to get these onto the same page, so grab the underexposed image, double click, OK, Control or Command C, Command V. Now unlock the first layer, the background layer. We want to see if these are lined up correctly, and it seems like they are. If we turn the opacity down, we should be able to see that they're lined up pretty damn well. This should help actually, but what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to the marquee tool. We're going to draw a box around one headlight layer via cut. Click on the image again, do the same thing for the other headlight. Layer via cut, hide the underexposed layer. From there, you want to create 2 layer masks on each of those images. Come into brush, make sure you zoomed in just enough onto brush, set your hardness to around 30%. This is what I mean by it gets a little bit fiddly, because we have to make sure that everything is looking perfect here. Now I'm going to bring the opacity back up. See, that looks pretty good, but if you can see underneath here, there is a little bit of light, a little bit of the light right there. And so what we're going to do, change over to a smaller brush, maybe 30 pixels, and we're going to brush in some of that reflection, which you should be able to see coming through right now. Now, you don't need to use any of these pens, but these things really do help, especially when it comes to wrist strain. If you're doing this quite full time, sometimes I like to remove the bottom layer just so you can see that it's a transparent layer, and just kind of refine my edges in here just to make sure that I haven't missed anything. From there, you have your amazing car photo. Now you can obviously make any adjustments you need to, but in order to get this back into Lightroom, you want to save as, you want to make sure that it's saved as a .tiff file. From there, you drag and drop into Lightroom, and you can make any adjustments that you need to there. That's exposure bracketing in a nutshell. It is a pretty big game changer and definitely an overpowered technique. And it doesn't matter what you shoot. It could be cars, landscapes, or waterfalls. It works for everything. Again, I do just want to give a big shout out to Kent Faith, who supplied me with this filter set for this video. And if you want to elevate your photography game, give exposure bracketing a try. Let me know any of the results you have below. Let's talk about it below. Tag me on Instagram at adventures.with.marley if you share your stuff. Just because we're done here does not mean that the adventure is over. Click right here to see us test out some TikTok hacks, and click on my face to subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload, and I will see you in the TikTok video.